As a student at the medical college, I've seen my fair share of cadavers. But nothing could have prepared me for what I encountered that day in the morgue. It all started when Dr. Miller, our anatomy professor, assigned me the task of examining the body of a woman who had succumbed to an unknown illness. I remember feeling a mix of curiosity and apprehension as I made my way to the morgue, wondering what mysteries awaited me behind those cold metal doors. Upon my arrival, I was greeted by Ralph, a burly attendant who seemed more at home among the dead than the living. He led me to the body, which lay on a stainless steel table, covered by a white sheet. "Here she is," Ralph said, pulling back the sheet to reveal the woman's pale form. I couldn't help but gasp at the sight before me. The woman's skin was ashen, her eyes closed in eternal slumber, and her veins appeared unnaturally dark against her pallid flesh. It was clear that whatever had taken her life had left its mark upon her body. "She's a real puzzle, ain't she?" Ralph remarked, his voice echoing in the sterile room. I nodded, unable to tear my eyes away from the enigma lying before me. Without another word, Ralph left me alone with the body, the silence of the morgue enveloping me like a shroud. Taking a deep breath, I gathered my courage and approached the table. With trembling hands, I reached out to touch the woman's cold skin, feeling a shiver run down my spine at the contact. I began my examination methodically, noting the slightest abnormalities and recording my observations in my notebook. As I worked, the minutes stretched into hours, the only sounds in the room the soft scratch of my pen against paper and the steady hum of the overhead lights. But then, just as I was about to make my first incision, something caught my eye. A faint twitch, almost imperceptible, but enough to make my heart skip a beat. Could it be? No. It must have been a trick of the light, a trick of my overactive imagination. With a steady hand and a racing heart, I took up the scalpel and prepared to make the first incision. The blade gleamed under the harsh fluorescent lights of the morgue, casting long shadows across the sterile room. As the cold steel met the woman's flesh, I expected to see crimson blood welling up from the wound. Instead, what greeted me was something altogether different. A thick, viscous fluid oozed from the incision, dark as night and with an otherworldly sheen. My surprise quickly turned to intrigue as I realized this was unlike anything I'd ever seen before. Carefully, I reached for a sterile vial and collected a sample of the mysterious substance, my mind already racing with possibilities. But as I worked, I noticed something peculiar. A faint tremor coursed through the woman's body, so subtle that I could have easily dismissed it as a trick of the light or a mere reflex. Yet, there was something about the way her muscles twitched that gave me pause. "Ralph, have you ever seen anything like this before?" I called out to the attendant, hoping for some insight into what I was witnessing. Ralph approached, his expression unreadable beneath the harsh glow of the overhead lights. "Can't say that I have, kid," he replied, his voice low and gruff. "But then again, I ain't no doctor." I nodded, my mind buzzing with unanswered questions. What could cause such a reaction in a body that had long since ceased to live? Was it some lingering effect of the unknown illness that had claimed her life, or something altogether more sinister? Pushing aside my doubts, I focused on the task at hand. With practiced precision, I continued my examination, making careful note of every detail, no matter how small or insignificant it may seem. But try as I might to rationalize what I had witnessed, a lingering sense of unease remained. It was as if the woman's body held secrets beyond my comprehension, secrets that whispered of darker truths, lurking just beneath the surface. As I delved deeper into my examination of the mysterious woman's body, I found myself drawn inexorably towards her heart. It lay still and silent within her chest, a silent sentinel guarding the secrets of her demise. With a mix of trepidation and determination, I reached for the electrodes, intending to stimulate the dormant organ and perhaps glean some insight into the cause of her death. Placing the electrodes carefully against her chest, I hesitated for a moment, the weight of what I was about to do heavy upon me. But curiosity, as they say, can be a powerful motivator. With a deep breath, I pressed the button, sending a surge of electricity coursing through her lifeless body. What happened next defied all rational explanation. The woman's body convulsed violently, as if racked by some unseen force. Her limbs thrashed about, knocking over instruments and sending vials clattering to the floor. And then, just as suddenly as it had begun, the movement ceased, leaving her lying still once more. But that was not the most shocking part. For as I looked on in horror, I saw her eyes flutter open, revealing twin pools of darkness that seemed to pierce straight through to my soul. It was as if she was seeing me for the first time, her gaze filled with a terrible hunger that sent a chill down my spine. I stumbled back, my heart pounding in my chest, my mind reeling from the sheer impossibility of what I had just witnessed. Was this some trick of the light? Some hallucination brought on by exhaustion and stress? Or had I truly brought this woman back from the brink of death? Before I could even begin to process what had happened, darkness crept in at the edges of my vision, swallowing me whole. With a final gasp, I collapsed to the floor, the world slipping away into unconsciousness. As consciousness slowly returned to me, I found myself lying on the cold, unforgiving floor of the morgue. Blinking away the fog of unconsciousness, I struggled to make sense of my surroundings. And then, I saw her. The woman, or what I had believed to be a lifeless corpse, was seated on the edge of the examination table, her dark eyes fixed upon me with an intensity that sent a shiver down my spine. Who are you?" I stammered, my voice barely more than a whisper. She smiled, a predatory gleam dancing in her eyes. "My name is Lily," she said, her voice smooth as silk, "and contrary to appearances, I am very much alive." I recoiled in horror, scrambling to put some distance between myself and this impossibility. "That's impossible," I muttered, my mind struggling to grasp the enormity of what I was witnessing. "You're dead. I saw you die." Lily laughed, the sound sending a chill down my spine. "Oh, I assure you, I am quite alive," she said, her tone dripping with amusement. Or perhaps I should say, undead. My blood ran cold at her words, the implication sinking in with a sickening weight. You're a vampire," I whispered, the realization hitting me like a blow to the gut. She nodded, her smile widening. "Yes, that's one way to put it. I was infected with a virus that turned me into this." She gestured to her pale, flawless skin, her eyes glinting in the dim light of the morgue. "But why are you here? What do you want from me?" I demanded, my fear giving way to a surge of defiance. Lily's expression softened, her eyes betraying a hint of vulnerability beneath their icy exterior. "I need blood to survive, Jacob," she said, her voice pleading, "and not just any blood, human blood." I shook my head, refusing to believe what I was hearing. "I can't help you," I said, my voice firm. "I won't be a part of whatever twisted game you're playing." But even as the words left my lips, a part of me wondered, could she be telling the truth? Could there really be such creatures lurking in the shadows, preying on the living to satisfy their unholy thirst? As I grappled with the implications of what Lily had revealed, one thing became abundantly clear. The world was a far stranger and more dangerous place than I had ever imagined, and whether I liked it or not, I was now a part of it. The air in the morgue seemed to grow thicker with tension as Lily and I stared at each other, the weight of her revelation hanging heavy between us. Could I trust her? Was she truly as harmless as she claimed to be? "Lily, I don't know what to believe," I admitted, my voice whirring with uncertainty. "You're asking me to accept something impossible." She reached out to me, her hand extended in a gesture of supplication. "I understand that this is a lot to take in, Jacob," she said softly. "But please, you have to believe me. I'm not your enemy. I never wanted any of this." I hesitated, torn between the rational voice in my mind screaming at me to run and the desperate plea in Lily's eyes begging for understanding. "I don't want to hurt anyone," she continued, her voice tinged with sadness. "I just want to live, Jacob. Is that really so much to ask?" I could see the conflict written plainly on her face. The struggle between her insatiable hunger and her desire to cling to whatever shred of humanity remained within her. And in that moment, I knew that I couldn't turn my back on her, no matter how terrified I was of what she had become. Taking a deep breath, I nodded slowly. "All right, Lily," I said, steeling myself for what lay ahead. "I'll help you." A look of relief washed over her features, a flicker of gratitude in her eyes. "Thank you, Jacob," she whispered, her voice barely more than a breath. "You won't regret this, I promise." With that, we set to work, gathering our belongings and preparing to make our escape from the morgue. I helped Lily into her coat, my hands trembling with nerves as I glanced around the dimly lit room, half expecting to see Dr. Miller lurking in the shadows, ready to pounce. But there was no sign of him, and for that, at least, I was grateful. Together, Lily and I slipped out into the cool night air, and darkness like a cloak enveloped us. As we sped away from the morgue in my car, the weight of our situation settled heavily upon us. The road stretched out before us, illuminated only by the dim glow of the headlights as we delved deeper into the heart of the night. "Tell me more about yourself, Lily," I urged, my voice barely above a whisper as I navigated the winding streets. "How did you end up like this?" Lily sighed, her gaze fixed on the passing scenery outside the window. "I was a journalism student," she began, her voice tinged with regret. "But everything changed when I was infected with the virus." She went on to recount the horrifying ordeal of her transformation, how Dr. Miller, driven by his insatiable thirst for immortality, had used her as a guinea pig in his twisted experiments, how she had managed to escape his clutches, only to be hunted down by the police and delivered to the morgue, a fate worse than death. "And now he's after me," she concluded, her voice heavy with resignation. "Dr. Miller knows I'm alive, and he won't stop until he has me back under his control." A cold fury welled up inside me at the thought of Dr. Miller and his despicable actions. "We can't let him get away with this," I declared, my hands tightening on the steering wheel. "We have to stop him, whatever it takes." Lily nodded, a determined glint in her eyes. "I'm with you, Jacob," she said, her voice steady. "We'll put an end to Dr. Miller's madness once and for all." As Lily and I arrived at my apartment and stepped inside, the air seemed charged with tension. Unbeknownst to us, Dr. Miller was already lurking within, his presence shrouded in shadows as he eavesdropped on our conversation. Emerging from the darkness, he greeted us with a sinister smile. "Ah, Jacob, Lily, how wonderful to see you both," he said, his voice dripping with false warmth. "I've been expecting you." My blood ran cold at the sight of him, his presence casting a pall over the room that seemed to suffocate me. "What do you want, Miller?" I demanded, my voice trembling with anger and fear. He chuckled, a sound that sent shivers down my spine. "Oh, nothing much, my dear boy," he replied, his gaze piercing me with an intensity that made my skin crawl. "I simply wish to explain my goals to you both." Lily tensed beside me, her eyes narrowing in suspicion. "And what goals would those be?" she asked, her voice betraying a hint of defiance. Dr. Miller's smile widened, revealing a row of gleaming teeth that seemed too sharp, too perfect to be natural. "I have created a virus, you see," he explained, his voice laced with arrogance. "A virus that turns humans into vampires. And now I intend to build an army of vampires to do my bidding." I recoiled in horror at his words, the sheer audacity of his plan sending a chill down my spine. "You're insane," I whispered, my voice barely more than a breath. Dr. Miller's eyes blazed with fanaticism as he continued to speak, his words a twisted manifesto of megalomania and madness. "I am a god," he declared, his voice ringing with conviction. "And I will rule this world with an iron fist. You, Jacob, and you, Lily, will be my first apostles. I will grant you eternal life and power beyond your wildest dreams." But before I could even begin to comprehend the enormity of his words, Dr. Miller moved with lightning speed, blocking the door and brandishing a syringe filled with his deadly virus. "Goodbye, my dear children," he said, his voice dripping with malice. "And may you awaken to a new dawn, bathed in the glory of your rebirth." And with that, he plunged the needle into our flesh, sending waves of paralysis coursing through our bodies as the darkness closed in around us. As Lily and I locked eyes one final time, we knew that our fate was sealed. This was the end of our old lives and the beginning of a new, terrifying chapter in our existence. With no words left to speak, we closed our eyes and awaited our destiny, whatever it may be.